Generally, to get bums on seats, a film is going to have to sell itself long before opening night. While that can start with an announcement of some kind, be it casting, directing, or just the title of the project itself, it's the trailers where things begin to ramp up. The world of horror conforms with the rest of Hollywood in this, in that a good trailer really is crucial. I'm Ellie for What Culture, and let's take a look at these recently released must-see horror movie trailers. Starting with The Dreadful. 2026 has been a big year for Sophie Turner already, right off the bat. First, Prime released the first look at the former Sansa Stark as Lara Croft for the upcoming Tomb Raider series, which was followed by the release of a trailer for her new film, The Dreadful. Continuing the theme of branching her career out as far as possible, following fantasy roles, superhero roles, and soon-to-be action heroes, Turner will be stepping into the arena of creepy gothic horror as Anne. Struggling in a world of demons of different forms, a curse, and the loss of her husband, The Dreadful has the potential to take Turner's career to new heights. Paired with the fact that the 1964 Japanese horror masterpiece the film is adapting is considered among the best of its genre, it's easy to see that The Dreadful will be well worth a watch. Turner will also be playing opposite Kit Harington, who of course played her half-brother Jon Snow in Game of Thrones. They may have been siblings then, and their romantic scenes together may have made both of them feel physically sick, but clearly the two have on-screen chemistry and familiarity that should bode well for the picture. Obsession. There are some movie trailers that show way too much, whether it's a huge spoiler that would have been best to save until opening night, or whether it goes way too deep into the detail of the film, essentially telling the entire story within 2 minutes. Neither of these issues applies to the trailer for Blumhouse's Obsession, which is set to release in May 2026. All viewers have been given so far is a snippet of a scene that gives just enough information regarding what the picture is about, without telling what will happen. After Milk and Cereal, a found-footage horror YouTube video, this will be Curry Barker's feature directing debut, and all signs currently point to a bright start to his career. The Bride. Even in just recent memory alone, there have been multiple variations of Frankenstein told on the big and small screens. Of course, the most high-profile has been Guillermo del Toro's Netflix effort, for which Jacob Elordi has been nominated for an Oscar, and now, just 1 year later, audiences will see yet another version of the famed Frankenstein's monster. While it was Elordi who portrayed the character in 2025, it will be the turn of Christian Bale in 2026, though it will not be in any kind of leading role. Instead, at the centre of the story will be Jessie Buckley's Bride. The Bride, which will feature Jake Gyllenhaal alongside Bale and Buckley and will be directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal, is set to release in May 2026, with the trailer almost giving off something of a Bonnie and Clyde vibe between the two monsters, though obviously there is a much deeper story to be told here. You may not have known you needed to see Christian Bale dancing around as Frankenstein's monster, but now you do. Ready or Not 2, here I come. Childhood games have been ruined comprehensively in the world of horror over the years, from Would You Rather to Netflix's Squid Games, taking something wholesome and potentially nostalgic and turning it into something dark. This was also the case with 2019's Ready or Not. After the success of the first movie 7 years ago, the well-deserved sequel is on its way, in spite of the original story not necessarily lending itself to anything further. The new trailer for Ready or Not 2 Here I Come essentially alludes to this, with a brief recap of the first film before Grace thanks God that it's over. But of course it's not. Imagine having to play a deadly game of hide and seek with your new family, and then being drawn back in after surviving against all odds the first time. Enter round 2. The trailer shows pretty much what would be expected, from the explanation as to how Grace can find herself in exactly the same situation again, to her motivation for actually taking part, as well as the smattering of new faces, including a deliciously evil Elijah Wood, and horror legend Sarah Michelle Gellar. Sure, there's the risk of retreading old ground here, but the first impression is that it looks like a fun follow-up at the very least. Scream 7. You'd have been forgiven for thinking that the Scream franchise was done for long before 2026. Franchises rarely continue into their 30th year, and with off-screen issues, it seemed that this particular one was coming to the end of the line. However, that has not been the case. Scream 3 and 4 are arguably the worst in the series, but in 2022, the property was given a fresh shot in the arm, a wave that has been ridden into 2026. With the likes of Neve Campbell, Courtney Cox, Matthew Lillard, David Arquette, and Scott Foley returning this year, there's a lot to be excited about. The trailer begins with Scream's trademark in-universe meta feel, as a couple stay at a B&B based around the Ghostface killer, and appear to be brutally killed themselves. This will surely be the opening moments before Sidney Prescott and her daughter Tatum become the main targets. Immediately, it's hard to look past newcomer Joel McHale's mark as a potential killer, as the newest big name being brought in, and as Sidney's husband, no less. But rarely has the Scream franchise been that straightforward. They will kill you. The film, which stars Zazie Beetz, doesn't exactly look to have the most original story ever, as a rich family turns out to be evil and hunts their maid to offer as a ritualistic sacrifice. Not exactly reinventing the wheel. There was also a lot shown in the 2.5 minutes of footage. This went far beyond a subtle hint of the story and the themes at play, and it felt instead like cramming as many of the key points into the trailer as possible. However, this does give hope for something deeper to come, because otherwise the teaser has spoiled almost the entire thing 3 months before They Will Kill You even releases. As the first outing to come from Nocturna, the production company of Andy and Barbara Muschietti, dare we hope that there is something more to this film that hasn't been shown yet? Whistle. Back in July 2025, the first trailer for Whistle was released, and the biggest takeaway was arguably the names dropped. From the executive producers of The Monkey, Evil Dead Rise and Longlegs, and the director of The Nun. All very impressive, of course, but more recently we've had a second trailer with a little more meat on the bone. Not enough to give the entire game away, like They Will Kill You, but enough to up anticipation and fear tenfold. The story teases an intriguing premise. Essentially, there's an ancient whistle that will summon the dead, more specifically, the whistleblower's own personal death. One blow and they will be stalked by their future demise. Everyone has to die, after all, but here there is a preset path set out from birth that is somewhat hurried along with the whistle. After debuting at Fantastic Fest in 2025, there are currently only 7 reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, and though there is no aggregated score, they are largely positive so far. Lee Cronin's The Mummy. As a franchise, the Stephen Sommers-crafted Mummy series has certainly had its ups and downs over the years. From the beloved first 2 movies, the less well-received Scorpion King spin-off, and the threequel sans Rachel Weisz. Then there was the Tom Cruise-fronted Mummy reboot that killed the Dark Universe before it even began. Safe to say, it's been a rollercoaster for the Mummy IP over the past few decades. In recent months, there has been rejoicing at the news of a 4th installment in that Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz franchise, complete with Weisz returning as Evelyn. But there is also a brand new take on the property coming from Evil Dead Rise director Lee Cronin. Yes, the last reimagining didn't exactly go well, but even with just a 1-minute trailer, Lee Cronin's The Mummy already looks miles better than Tom Cruise's. Cronin's picture isn't going to be a fun action-adventure, and it's not going to be a bland and forgettable reboot with no real identity. Right out of the gate, this looks terrifying. Cronin, coming off the back of Evil Dead Rise in 2023, will of course be leaning further into the horror side of the supernatural, and has already begun to build intrigue around what happened to Katie. This will be unlike anything else in the Mummy's history, for better or for worse, though at first glance it would appear to be the former. Send help. He may have directed more Marvel movies than horror films in the last 20 years, but Sam Raimi is and will always be an icon of the genre, and there will always be excitement when his name comes up in any capacity. The legendary Evil Dead director returns to his scary roots with Send Help in 2026, reuniting with Rachel McAdams, who he directed in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, alongside Dylan O'Brien, and both McAdams and O'Brien look set to bring great performances to proceedings. The Send Help trailer immediately paints McAdams' Linda as the sympathetic underling to her boss, O'Brien's Bradley, who is already a detestable character after just 2 minutes of footage. However, the roles will be reversed when the two survive a plane crash. On a deserted island, with Bradley suffering a gruesome injury, Linda will find herself in a position of power and begin to enjoy it. You can already feel how uncomfortable and uncertain Send Help will make audiences, particularly when Raimi's trademark style comes shining through. Though it also looks like it could be unbelievably satisfying to see Bradley's life turned on its head and his comeuppance arrive. And finally, Dracula. The final entry on this list is slightly different, in that this film was released in summer 2025 throughout France, but has only recently had a trailer release to kick off the marketing campaign for its February 2026 American release date. Dracula is a character that has been brought to the screen countless times, with actors like Gary Oldman, Luke Evans, and Christopher Lee bringing him to life, and even Adam Sandler, Nicolas Cage, and Leslie Nielsen portraying versions of the famed Count. The point is that the vampire and his story have been imagined and reimagined in numerous different ways, and 2026 will be no different. This Luc Besson-directed film sees Caleb Landry Jones star as the titular character, with the trailer suggesting that while there will be the classic elements of horror and those trying to kill Dracula, it will be based more around his love life. Jones certainly has the potential to bring a unique take on the legendary vampire to the screen. And if the balance is right between gore and romance, as Dracula searches for the reincarnation of his wife from 400 years earlier, this could be an intriguing piece.